Hi, my name is Jeremy, and I'm an interaction designer at a publishing house working to help one of our authors to turn her cookbook into an iPad app. I've been working as an interaction designer for years, and despite all the hype in the blogs and magazines about living in the tablet and post PC era, the tools we're using to produce mobile apps haven't quite kept up. None of these programs make it quick and easy to explore all of the transitions and gestures available so that my prototype feels just right. There are some programs starting to pop up that focus on mobile prototyping. I've tried Tigger, Mockup, Proteo, Envision. The list goes on. None of them have worked for me. Fortunately, I just got into a private beta of a cool new program called Vellum. My favorite part of Vellum is that it allows me to test and refine both gestures and transitions in my designs. I can turn my sketches into interactive prototypes in minutes and test them right on the iPad. Now I can get feedback in a fraction of the time and I can focus on refining and improving designs instead of trying to figure out how to make my prototypes in the first place. Let me show you Vellum and why I like it so much. This is Vellum. All I have to do is scan my drawings and then import them into Vellum. I have a bunch of drawings which represent each state of the cookbook I'm designing. And it's really easy to rename those states so I can keep things organized and it'll be easy to recognize specific drawings later on. This is the design view, where most of my time is spent. At the bottom of the screen is the timeline, which is where I can move around my project from beginning to end. Two states are always selected in the timeline, and it's those states that I'm working on. You can see a larger version of those states in the upper part of my screen here. This toolbar, in between the two states I'm working on, contains all I need to make my prototype. I want to create a quick prototype that shows how someone would browse to a particular recipe. To do this, I want the user to tap on the All Recipes button to go to the next page. So first I select the tap gesture, and then the area where that tap will occur. I want the All Recipes listing page to appear with a burst of energy, so I'll choose the pop-in transition. All transitions require that I define what changes between the two states. For pop-in, I only need to define how the transition ends. I'll drag the end zone to pop in the whole screen. I want to see what the pop-in will look like. That looks good. So I'll insert the transition into the timeline with this button here. Now let's move on to design the transition between states 2 and 3. Taps account for a majority of the gestures on the iPad, so it's really convenient that the default gesture in Vellum is tap, so I often can move right along to defining where the hotspot is. Let's say the user taps on this steak. When the user taps on that recipe, further details are shown so the user can decide if they really want to make that steak. I want this transition to be quick, so I'll choose the default transition, which is instant. The recipe photo will be the start of the animation, and the recipe card is the end. I know what an instant transition looks like, so I'm going to put it straight into the timeline without previewing. Actually, an instant transition might be too harsh, so let's try a fade. And if I wanted to, I could tweak the timing of the fade, but for now, let's just add the fade as a possible alternate I'd like to try out in addition to the instant I previously put in. Actually, I think this transition needs more emphasis than an instant or fade really provides. I think what this transition needs is a flip and grow. I've seen this transition before in the iTunes store and really liked it. Let's try this transition also. So at this point, I'm not really sure what transition I want to use, and I can quickly switch between the transitions I've created with this button here in the timeline. And if I click and hold on this button, I can see all the possible transitions I'm thinking about using, and even compare the transitions to one another. Let's compare the instant to the flip and grow. Yeah, I was right. The flip and grow is the way to go. So now that I've chosen the transition, let's delete the other two. You know what? I realize one of my sketches is out of order. This state doesn't belong there. Let's take care of that. At this point, if I exported my project to the iPad, I'd only have 3 states and 2 transitions to show. That's not nearly enough to meet deadline, so let's import some more drawings to create a more complete prototype. I must have been distracted when scanning those images. I see that there are 2 states that are out of place. First, I have to move this state to an earlier part of my project, right here in front of the 3rd state. This state requires that I have to delete the last transition I showed you, as the end of the transition is now based on a different image. That's not a big deal though, as I can recreate that transition in seconds. The next thing I need to fix is a state with some typos. I've corrected those typos with a later scan, and so I'll replace state 2 with this drawing. Let me show you what the prototype looks like so far on the iPad. Here's Aunt Eileen's cookbook app. I just exported from Vellum. If someone wants to browse what's inside, they would just tap All Recipes. Let's say they chose to view more information about, say, the Salisbury steak. The recipe card flips and grows and shows you a nice picture of the food, and then gives you the ingredients and the instructions and details about the recipe above. If the user wanted to cook this recipe, they would tap this button here. Thanks for letting me show you Vellum, and when you get a chance, you should definitely check it out. If you need help getting into the private beta, visit www.sgolds.com.